Huh. Okay. Hello, my name's Andrea Thompson, and my friendly avatar is here to welcome you. Today, I have the honor of interviewing two filmmakers who have short films playing at Sundance Film Festival. First up, we have Hazel McKibben, director of Double Speak. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And we also have Trish Harnato, director of You Wouldn't Understand. Thank you as well for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. And I guess we'll start with you as to my first question is generally what got you into filmmaking, and why did you choose this particular story for your film?
Do you mean me? Start?
Oh yes, Trish.
Okay, sorry. Gosh, my background is really like rooted in theater, or for a very long time. I'm a playwright, and about 10 years ago, I started making films with my collaborators, who both star in the film that's at Sundance. You Wouldn't Understand, Jacob O'Ware and Anthony Arkin, and we started making short form comedies. Because we had a shared sensibility, and we were always kind of looking to investigate like the mundane humor and horror of the world we live in. And so that's kind of what brought us together. And the second part of your question, I think, is like, why did we create this film? Is that right?
Yeah. How did you choose this particular, normally I say this particular topic, but with yours, I have to say this particular story, which reminded me of Doctor Who meets David Lynch and Scream.
Great. Love it. All that sounds great. We're so curious what people think of this, since we haven't had the chance to like ever see it in a theater with a live audience, nor will we now. But as you can imagine, reactions are just very mixed. Jacob and I kind of came up with the concept for the film, and we kind of hashed out the story, and we co-wrote it together. And then we brought Tony in, he edited the film as well. And so it was very much like a collaboration. The three of us create work together under the name Steel Drum and Space. And we had a couple ideas of some images we wanted. We wanted it to be kind of a genre bending film that had like a slow everyday horror to it, and kind of explored how, to me, what I always found interesting about it is like how you think you recognize something and then you don't. And so it was really taking that idea and then having a lot of fun with it.
Excellent. And Hazel, your film is also very unsettling in a completely opposite way. It's very much about the horror of everyday life with and all the outlandish forces are due to sexism, like the patriarchy, basically, for lack of a better word or phrase. But I think it's a pretty good phrase for how your characters, what your character has to deal with in this film. So, why and how did you get into filmmaking, and why did you choose this particular story for your film?
Yeah. I worked as an editor, mostly like commercial fashion and beauty work for 5 years or so, and then decided I wanted to direct, and the easiest, or not easiest, but the path that felt the most clear to me was to go to film school. So I'm still at Columbia, actually. I'm doing my MFA, and this film was a short I made at the end of my first year of school, and it's based on my own experience of reporting sexual harassment in the workplace. And I just felt like I couldn't make another film until I made this one. It felt like I needed to sort of like exercise it from my filmmaking. It was just so occupying my mind at that time. That's how we made it. I made it with my classmates at school.
Definitely, and thank you for sharing something that's, if you didn't know that it was based on your experiences, it was clearly very personal. So thank you for sharing that. And Trish, your film, again, another thing your films have in common is the slow build to an emotional to emotional climax in the case of Hazel's, or in the case of yours, just sheer insanity? I mean, you know it was building to something, but I don't think anyone could have predicted that ending. So how did you decide to build that slow suspense?
Well, first of all, Hazel, I wanted to say I really loved your film, and it was so fun watching all of the shorts in our block. And Andrea, I love that you're comparing these two films because they couldn't be more different.
No, but I feel like they have
No, I like
something in
so
common.
I love that. I love that that you see that. That's great. Um, I mean, we wanted there to be an event in the film, and that changed it halfway through, and we talked a lot about reveal. We talked a lot about um, time loops. Obviously, we definitely had a lot of images that we started with. The idea of that long run was always very central, and kind of the million things that happen when you watch something or someone coming towards you, uh, and what that moment is, and really wanting to live inside of that moment and experience. And I think that Anthony's character, who's on the picnic, uh, blanket, it's really, fun to watch him kind of try to understand what's happening to him. Um, and
Mhm.
so we wanted then to kind of, turn it into a little bit of an action movie, if you will. And yeah, I mean, just again, the tone, we weren't interested in people being able to expect anything. We wanted it to kind of be this ride and adventure. And so it was really important to really set up that first half of the film. And, we talked a lot about Hitchcock. We talked a lot about Monty Python. And it's like just bringing these influences together with our own kind of what I hope is like a unique brand of comedy.
It's definitely unique. I will
Good.
say that.
Yeah. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of understand. Yeah, I kind of understand where it came from. Um, and Hazel, you had a very different build up in your film. Like it starts out with the two men and the two women, one of whom is reporting it, and you could see the women as the men go on talking. You can see them exchange those glances, like, oh boy, here it comes. So how did you build something so suspenseful and also like I said, very personal?
Yeah, no, Trish, I really enjoy. I love that your film is like it's all about the unexpected, and mine is almost like the expected. You're just
Right,
watching
right,
it
right.
all happen. In that way, there. It felt important to me for it to be like to be how it happened. I mean, I pulled a lot of the dialogue from a recording that I have of that my meeting.
Wow.
So that sort of structured it, and then
Oh,
just
no
figuring,
wonder it feels so familiar.
yeah,
Like,
it's pretty familiar. Yeah, yeah, just figuring out the best way to be in her perspective and to experience it with her while you still know, I think from the beginning sort of where it's going to go. Um, just pulling those together, and we rearranged the scenes. It was written very differently, and then sort of in the edit finding the best way to leave it on the most tense note for her, and so like you're in her experience without it being subjective. It's quite like objectively shot, but the experience of it, her emotions, I kind of wanted us to feel that the audience to feel that tension, like while you're watching that experience.
yeah, you do mention the ending, and yet another thing your films have in common, kind of the unsettling, fatalistic ending. So Hazel, why did you decide to have that kind of ending? I take it that's how your experience ended.
Yeah, it is. It's how my experience ended, although it didn't really end there because, of course, the stuff like continues on and sort of kind of. I kept working at the place where I had that experience. So it just felt that was the most honest. It didn't feel right to give it a positive ending, although part of me like wanted to rewrite the ending I would have wanted, but that wasn't. I tried and it didn't feel true, and I think like I'm I'm quite interested in the smaller dramas and like things that aren't necessarily inherently dramatic, but it's just anxiety inducing, hopefully. And so yeah, that's kind of why I decided to end it there.
And Trish, why, without, I can't go into it without spoilers, but why that ending that, well, I feel like Hazel's was far more predictable, but yours, like I said, no one could have predicted it. Why that ending?
Listen, our movie still hasn't ended. It's just like a continuous loop out there in the world. I think, we wanted to
An end without an end, as they said in the Never Ending Story, the book.
Oh, that's great. Another good movie. I think that yeah, I don't want to obviously whatever give it away but we wanted to end it in a spot that made people want to go back and watch it again.
I see. Yeah, I think there's definitely much more to notice now that once we experience it. And like Hazel, for yours, like, actually, you know what, Trish, I think I'll start with you, actually, because this is a better follow-up for your film. Do you think there is a solution to the problem in your film? Solution?
I don't think there's a problem in the film.
Really? Is that whole eternal time loop thing?
No. I'm just kidding. I don't know if the word solution is correct. I mean, I think that, and again, one of the things that we really had to do is, not engage in too many logic. Like, everyone has their own kind of, time travel. And when that stuff happens in films, like, what is their logic here and there? And we definitely have our own logic. But I think that, we wanted this to be to feel like a slice of an infinite slice of an infinite pie, if you will. And so that no one at this point is looking for a solution. It's just what is out there if you look.
And Hazel, what about your film? Do you think there's a solution to this problem of sexual harassment in the workplace?
It's a light question for you, Hazel.
I would hope there's a solution at some point, but I don't know. I think in making the film, I feel like if an audience watching can feel what she feels and like what I felt, then hopefully they would want to be part of the solution. Because it's, I mean, a big part of the film is about the gray area in differing perceptions of what sexual harassment even is. And to me, it was very clear, but was not to the men in the office. And I think even in the reception of the film, it's definitely walks the line of like what's appropriate and what's not, and generationally and across gender lines. And I just think if you can feel how I felt, how she feels, hopefully you can you want to change something about this large institutional problem that is years in the making of being solved.
Yes, because this is a problem that can't often be explored in like a news report or something. You see that in your film. There's a whole system enabling this, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Lighter question. Trish, I want to go lighter with you and eventually Hazel. Well, you've had Hazel, this is your debut, but Trish, you've been working in theater and making other films, and it's actually been 8 years since you last directed your previous film, right?
Well, there's been a ton of little small short comedies that we've done that haven't that kind of fall in that strange content land that's not quite a short film, but is meant to live somewhere. So I've been working on those with Tony and Jacob, and I'm doing a lot of theater. So yeah. So it's been kind of it's a fun balance, and I feel like both of the they kind of inform each other. And as you as you keep hopefully like honing in on what is interesting and how to create, you know, a scenario that's worth your time in either, you know, film or theater. I think that they kind of feed each other in a really, really cool ways.
I'm curious about something, something else. Why did you decide to have two male leads in this film?
You know, it was really just because, again, like I'm full disclosure married to Jacob, who is one of the leads, and then the other one, just we've been creating comedy together for 8 years, and it's just we have many projects where they're not the leads in the film, or that they're in there, and you know, but it was just the way this story came out, and we knew it was going to be a real small story, and it wasn't going to be like, you know, it wasn't going to have, you know, this whole world behind it. We really wanted to focus in on this one day and this one moment, and you know, hopefully we're working on a longer version of this, and there'll be many more people in it. So we kind of, you know, part of what you do, I mean, when you're working with low budgets and, you know, trying to do the best you can, is like we're all friends, and we made this project together because we could, and so that's like another reason, you know.
Ah, I see. And but Hazel, this is your directorial debut, right?
Yeah.
It's quite brave to go this personal for your feature debut on it, especially on a topic in spite of, you know, the post Me Too, a lot of people still quite don't know how to talk about this. So why did you decide to do this for your debut, if you don't mind my asking?
It was one of the first scripts that I wrote when I got to school, and it similarly felt the most doable. It's just one afternoon. I shot it over 2 days. The time and like unity of time, place, and action, and I made it similarly with my Columbia friends, and it felt the most doable in terms of scope, but it also felt the most personal, important for me to tell, and also where I could kind of start to explore like what I was interested in, like tonally, and like thinking about larger projects. There's not a feature. I would not want to make a feature version of Doublespeak, but I'm interested in similar themes, and this was like a way for me to start exploring that.
And was it a very intense 2 days?
It was pretty intense 2 days.
I bet. Oh, man.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was an intense 2 days, like both in terms of like the usual production madness, and then you know, it's like it was hard for me to watch Angela like go. Angela's the lead, to have those experiences, to like relive my own experiences through her, but it was super cathartic, and yeah, it was a good experience overall.
Sounds good. Did you like have to like do a lot to keep the mood light on set? Because one of the things I've heard is, when I'm interviewing filmmakers, is that the darker the film, a lot of them say the lighter the mood is while they're actually filming.
Yeah, I mean, part of the benefit of like making it with my classmates and friends is like they all knew that we'd been workshopping the script in classes for like 8 months by the time we made it, and they all know me, and they knew it was like personal story. So I think we just like, if it was light and it was busy, like we were just trying to like get it done, and you know, we had a really hectic schedule, so there was no time for it to be difficult. We just had to like shoot it, and we had a doing it.
I see. Trish, what was the mood like shooting your film? I imagine it was less intense because of the subject matter, because you all knew each other, but that's,
you know what? Yeah, no, like I was definitely, we all have a great time, which is so important. But we were racing the sun the whole time. You know, we shot outside. We shot, you know, in late in the year, and we knew that in order for it to work, we only had a few hours a day where we could really shoot. And so we also shot it over 2 days, and so there
Oh,
was a
wow.
lot of prep that went into trying to get it all done. So it was fast and furious and great, and all of those things, and many obstacles, like any set. But yeah, it was a crazy weekend.
Yeah, sounds like for both of you, it was an intense 2 days, actually, and again, in very different ways. And Trish, you mentioned before, like the what influences this film had, like Monty Python and such. But was there any one influence that was bigger? Because I gotta admit, rethinking your short, it almost reminded me, or it was almost reminiscent of the insanity that was and partly still is, like last year, like when you felt like you were doing the subject to the same brutal forces over and over again, you
That's
know?
so funny. That's really interesting. We shot this before the pandemic, but it lends itself strangely to the pandemic in this way, and that's been like something we've been like trying ourselves to articulate, because it feels like it could be made during the pandemic. I don't know, but
It's isolated, it's outside, you have a
I know, it's all these things that like we're all doing now. But it's so funny again, like I'm a super language-based playwright. I come out of like an experimental, studying with like Mac Wellman, and so I'm always like really interested in how people speak to each other. And so, some of my influences are just, avant-garde playwrights from like the last 100 years. And Jacob comes from a comedy background and was a big Monty Python fan, and Anthony, is a walking vault of movies. And so, we would sit there and talk about, everything from Barton Fink to Lawrence of Arabia to, just, and try to kind of like mash up these influences that we had until we kind of, again, like put it through the strainer and found, our own tone. And, and really trusting the barometer of humor. And
Everyone's got that look of deranged glee in their eyes now, perhaps they've all come
right,
around to that
right.
mindset.
And we felt like, it was always like, okay, if we can make each other laugh, then it's going to work. And whatever work means, we'll define later. But that's always very important, when we're working together.
It almost sounds like the process Amy Heckerling used to create her films, especially Clueless, because I read in the oral history that she also collected words to make good use of in her film.
Oh,
So
interesting. I'll have to look that up. I don't know it.
thank you. Uh, Hazel, was there any particular well, obviously how this came to be we've discussed, but was there any particular film or any other particular influence that inspired kind of the mood you wanted to create on set?
I actually used more for like, the story was my own. So then for visuals, I used more photography. So I was looking a lot at like Nan Goldin photographs and Ren Hang. But then I'm always influenced by Robert Bresson and more recently Joanna Hogg, who's filmed The Souvenir and Archipelago. I really love, and for like the subtlety and like sort of smaller drama. But yeah, mostly photographs actually for this one, which is not usual for me. But I think because it was so my own story.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that actually reminds me of something again. In Trish, you take this comfortable, luxurious country setting with this picnic spread. Was it like how intentional? Like obviously this must have been intentional, but with the picnic, why did you choose that particular setting? Like it just expressed ultimate comfort to me. So, is there any particular
Yeah, I
reason
mean,
you started
I
off
think
that
again, in kind of that,
inspired to start off in that particular setting?
I think we wanted to ground the film in the idea of luxury solitude, quiet, almost like a very perfect ideal setting that anyone would want to be there, and then kind of set out to fracture it. And so, you know, what could be better than a picnic alone? Reading a book on aviation mathematics. I mean, it sounds like a pretty great day to me. So we just wanted to kind of like lean into what, what that brought, and how there was a sense of indulgence in there as well. And then just start to kind of peel it back.
And Hazel, what exactly location did you shoot in? It felt recognizable in a general way, but I'm curious as to how you chose like where to shoot.
We actually used two different office spaces and then designed them to look like one. And it was just one was a friend who just let us use his office on the weekend, and then the other one was this digital women's agency that we kind of cold emailed, and again they let us use their space for one day. And then the outside scene, it's in like West Soho, in the city, in New York City, and yeah, but yeah, it was super low budget because it's a student film, and we're limited by Columbia's guidelines, and so we just like made use of every possible resource we could pull together to make the film.
And what made you? The title is very eloquent. Doublespeak. What made you choose that one?
We went through lots of title iterations. It was hard to find something that didn't feel melodramatic or like too sentimental. But Doublespeak, I think, speaks to like the coded language that they have, and the that's like in the office meeting, and the way that like nobody's ever really saying what they mean, and that kind of that appealed to me in terms of speaking to like what the film is more largely about, and sort of the ways in which you can undermine someone's experience through language.
Oh yes, so much that she ends up apologizing to them for not reporting it earlier. So that felt so familiar. And Trish, how did you choose your title? It's simple, but it's very fitting, especially at the end. Like you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, it was like a miscommunication between the three of us that ended as a happy accident. One of the lines in the film is, "I don't think you'd understand," and so we thought about calling it that, but then we forgot about that, and we just accidentally started calling it "You Wouldn't Understand," and then we remembered about that, and we were like, "Oh," and so we then made the choice to call it "You Wouldn't Understand," because we liked what it did. We liked that it was an interpretation, and of a line. It wasn't straight from there, and it kind of gave a sense of speaking to the beholder as well. And it was, it was just more fun.
Yeah, your film is very fun in a devilishly sadistic kind of way at times. It's a very unique comedy style. Can you kind of tell me where you kind of got that style from? What inspired you to go for that kind of comedy?
But what kind of comedy? I mean, I actually would love to hear what kind of comedy do you mean?
Well, just a strange, surreal, more Lynch kind of comedy. I describe it. Lynch
I think that
on how you mentioned it.
Sure. I think it really, and not to be repetitive, but it really goes back to what makes me and Jacob and Tony laugh. And I'm drawn to more absurdist types of humor, or I really think it takes a lot to have an experience. And I'm not very interested in broad comedy because I don't think it's funny. And I'm not very, like the things that are memorable or that you have an experience watching are usually very surprising. And so again, like in my theater, in my plays, I'm always been a fan of dark comedy, like, the kind of like the darker the better. And though this, this goes more into like the sci-fi world of things, I think that having it be a hybrid, kind of helps hopefully elevate that comedy into something unique. And so it was just, it's basically trial and error of my whole life.
I see. Are people ever like surprised about what the kind of comedy you're drawn to?
Like my mom? Yeah, my mom's like, where did you come from? Like,
Mm-hmm.
sure. I mean, I think that I think because part of my interest, I don't want anything inaccessible, it's not meant to
Mm-hmm.
confuse or frustrate or anything like that, but it's just meant to surprise, I guess. I always want a lot of reveals. I want people to think something's going to happen, and I want something else to happen. I want to, mess with expectation in a way and use that as almost as if it's in the script. I really, really think that what you leave out or what you don't say is of greater importance than what you do say. And so I think that with comedy, a lot of times, um, when we think of traditional comedy, it's because of what people say, not because of what they don't say. And so I think there's some sort of, marriage of the language and, the physicality of what we hopefully achieved in the short that
Mm-hmm.
sets it into its strange place, this own strange world.
Definitely. Do people? But are people in the industry ever surprised? Because I found that usually they expect female filmmakers to have a certain type of tone and comedy if they think they can do comedy at all. Sometimes, in my experience, so are
I
people
mean, that's
surprised?
just like, you know what, Andrea, you probably know more than me about this. I am just on this side of things, making the work that speaks to me, and I don't know, you know.
That's
So
kind of beautiful that you don't know. Honestly, I think that
well, and
means
I just don't believe in that kind of like. I don't believe in putting labels on things like that, and so I'm not interested in it, and I'm not going to spend any time thinking about it,
Mhm.
honestly.
Yeah, I remember back in the day it wasn't acceptable for men to constantly say women can't be funny. So
I just think that's ridiculous and untrue. So
it's
honestly,
definitely
I
ridiculous.
don't spend any time thinking about that because it's not true. I would rather just keep finding ways to keep being funny, you know?
I think, frankly, a lot of people say that, still think that, but there's just a whole lot more pushback now.
Pushback on females in comedy or
That I no, I think women are pushing back and saying like no, that my gender doesn't prevent me from being comedic or from being able to direct or anything like that.
sure. Yeah, I hope so. I would join that march.
Same. And Hazel, more off topic. I just remembered that, well, not just, but your film doesn't just take place in this conference room in this workplace. I thought it was quite interesting frankly, that it started off in a women's restroom, which is kind of like a traditional haven for women. And back in the day, they were even the first message boards. So why'd you decide to kind of character character kind of like have that moment of quiet where she just tries to steel herself before she heads into that conference room?
Yeah, I
Why
think it
go
was
there?
exactly. It was that. It was like I just wanted a moment of her like getting ready to like do battle basically.
Mhm.
And I think like especially when dealing with something that's so kind of public and she's being judged by her coworkers, and obviously this was a larger like they investigated or whatever. There is that moment I think always of like your own acknowledgement of your perception, like how other people see you, and um, taking a moment before that meeting,
Mhm.
to gauge that and to get ready. I think is like part of part of the whole thing, the larger problem, which is it doesn't matter like how she's perceived or whatever. It's like the issue is what her experience was and whether or not that's
Mhm.
acceptable in the workplace, regardless of how it's perceived by anyone.
Mhm. And yeah, you also have a moment outside where she kind of reassures her mother, and yeah, in a way her female colleague tries to reassure her because I think she also knows how it went. Why did you decide to include those last two characters?
I think, well, the only scene that was like fictionalized was actually the scene outside, calling her mother. I didn't even tell my mom.
Wow.
But I felt like
She knows now, Hazel. She knows now.
she knows now. Yeah, she knows now. It felt like she needed to have a moment to reflect on what had happened, and then we needed to see her lie to herself and to her mother and then go back in, because otherwise I couldn't justify having her go back in. And yeah, she needed to like verbalize it, and so the audience could see that she was making a conscious decision of like, it is what it is, I'm going back to work.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't in the film, but I've often found in these kind of situations, I was so glad that her supervisors and her female supervisors and basically her female colleagues like really tried to support her. But I've also found in both my experience and others that some women will blame the victim in this situation. Did you experience that?
Yeah, well, I think in the film, like the ultimate betrayal is by her female supervisor, who basically says it doesn't matter. You'll have to work with him anyway, and if you have to. And that was part of like when we panned, and the movement there was the kind of the final betrayal. But then of course, like she's in a position of power and in a position of having the interest of the business or whatever. Whereas the coworker, her friend, is not in that. They're equals, and they can sort of have a moment of acknowledging and I don't know, feeling not good about the situation in a way that the female supervisor couldn't, because of her obligations or a choice that she made, because that's what it is. It was a choice.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess I saw her as in a position of power, but wanting sort of wanting to help, but knowing she couldn't do much. But do you think it was a more conscious decision not to help her?
I think it's
responsible for it.
I think it's both. I think she did want to, but it's a business decision ultimately, which I think is unfortunately what the problem is most of the time, is that it becomes a financial decision and like what can we do to protect our best interests rather than like necessarily helping someone else. So I think she to me, she felt conflicted, but ultimately chose the business over helping her or supporting her, the main character, Emma.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I know that was probably true for your experience too.
Yeah, it was.
I'm really sorry for that. I wish,
Made a film out of it.
Yeah.
Full circle.
This is a question for both of you, and that is there anything, Trish, I'll start with you. Is there anything you want the audience to take away from your film after watching it?
Yeah, I want them just to watch it right away again, and with a new perspective. And I hope they find it entertaining, and I hope they, forget about their troubles for 9.5 minutes.
Yes, just enjoy someone else's troubles for a little.
Yeah, and just to think about things differently, and like, and to understand that there's so many layers all around that you can't see and that you don't know, and maybe just to question a little bit more.
And Hazel, what would you like people to take away from your film after watching it?
I think just that, like, although a lot of progress has been made with the Me Too movement and everything, a lot of these stories are kind of, it's not important enough to make the news, and those are that's what I wanted to highlight through the film, and hopefully what I'd like people to think about is it's just because it's not being reported in the news doesn't mean it's not happening in businesses like everywhere.
Definitely. And we're coming up more towards the end of it, so I wanna ask you both, what's next for you, Trish?
I've just finished recording actually a narrative podcast series that I wrote, and that's going to be coming out in March. And I also ended up shooting another small short in December with, very much with COVID rules in place. And so I'm looking forward to starting to work on that soon.
Excellent. And Hazel?
I shot a short in August, and we're in post for that now, but I'm also working on my thesis film, and hopefully we'll, fingers crossed, COVID allowing, we'll shoot in July in the UK.
Oh, cool.
Excellent. And yeah, thank you both. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Andrea.
Definitely.